our lives being led with a long obedience in the same direction. Almost instead of doing, but becoming.
Yes.
I think if our focus is on becoming, the doing becomes the natural fruit of that.
Hey, Brian Oakes with New Vertical, and today we are talking about ambition. In the past, we've defined ambition as a desire or a longing for something that feels outside of our reach. And today we're contrasting that with stewardship, those things that are under our immediate control, the things that we have day to day, week to week access to. So we're here with Brad Westbrook. Brad, tell us a little bit about yourself and we'll dive right in.
Sure. Awesome. This is Brad Westbrook. I'm based here in Roswell, Georgia, which is a suburb of Atlanta. Lived here my entire life. I'm 47 and am actually in the commercial real estate space. We own and operate retail real estate properties. And by operate, it means, we acquire them. We don't run the businesses. But we often lease out properties to people, and that's often done with a multitude of investors that we've had.
Boardwalk, Park Place, Ventura Avenue.
Exactly. Monopoly, exactly. Ours are slightly less glamorous than those appealing dresses. I guess we're probably more like St. James Place. I think. Probably more like
Tennessee, Kentucky Avenue.
Yeah, we're those that are a little bit further down the line. But yeah, that's where we spend our vocational time.
Awesome. So I did ask you earlier, because we were talking like that big 50,000 foot view, taking ambition as being both worldly and Christian, and then how do we steward that? But that stewardship is relational.
Yes. Well, I think that all humans have ambition. Mm-hmm. That looks differently. But I think our call as followers of Jesus is to channel that ambition into a manner in which we are stewarding those ambitions. I mean, first, I think we have to, or what I try to do is I try to ground myself in a daily rhythm of relating to God. What I have found when I become disconnected from that grounding, I become very selfish. Mm-hmm. I become very focused on my own desires and my own outcomes. And I begin to see the relationships in my world as byproducts for those goals.
Okay.
How do you get me to where I want to go?
Okay.
But when we're abiding in Christ on a daily basis, we hopefully begin to see that all things are under his stewardship. All things are under his created order. Mm-hmm. The relationships that I have are even under his related order. And what he's asking us to do as followers of Jesus is to extend that same relationship that he provides to us to those around us.
When you're talking about abiding, I couldn't help but think of the surfing illustration. I've never been a surfer, but I've been told that the key to surfing, there's this ambition for the wave and the longing, the drive, the suiting up, everything. And there you are. Now the wave's happening, and your job is to be fully present. To be fully in the moment, waiting in the water, waiting for the wave. And then when it comes, fully connected to the water, the land, the moment, the sky, be present. And I wonder how that translates in that sense of abiding.
Yeah. It's it reminds me of a conversation I was having with a friend recently, and we were just talking about the concept in our for-profit businesses of how do we know the difference between this being our own desire and a desire from God. Because we want to be doing the things that are from God.
Right.
We want to continue to be moving in that direction. Well, how do you know? How do you know? And he said something that was very appropriate, and it merged with something that's been kind of a resonating tone in my own life recently. And he said, I'm waiting, but I'm ready for the wind of God to push me in a direction. And I loved that analogy from a sense of there was a proactive getting ready. you're still moving, you're still doing things, but ultimately at the end of the day, it needs to be the God breathed breath moving you in a direction, or else it's just another thing that we're doing in our own strength and our own power. And that combined with an idea that it actually comes out of Romans 5 and talking about the trials and the tribulations that we have in our lives sometimes, and some things that I've been going through recently. I feel like that's squarely the case. But Eugene Peterson's Message version, which some people like, I enjoy Peterson and who he was as a pastor and a teacher and a writer. Yeah. But Peterson talked about how the struggles and the trials in our life would create a patient persistence, or a persistent patience, I think, in our lives. I thought about that. Like, what does patient persistence mean? What does it mean to be persistent and patient at the same time? But he follows that up and it says that it creates the tempered tempered steel of virtue is created in us. And I was thinking about how steel is created and how
tempered steel of virtue.
You're in this, steel is heated up and molded into something that becomes kind of an indestructible force. And it's like, but we need to go through those struggles, and we need to allow that patience to mold us. But there's a participating factor with that. It's not us just like rolled over like a seal on a beach, like waiting for God to do something. Like, we have to enter into that relationship, but be patient enough to allow God to do the work that He's
submitting in the process.
Yeah, submitting. And that's hard. Going back to your key word about ambition. Yeah. I think we see ambition as entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. Go do it. Go get it. Go get it done. Yeah. Let's make it happen. And that is good. There's good in that when it is funneled in the proper place, and when it is funneled in the area that we know that we can trust. We can trust God. The hard part is we don't think that we can trust God. So we have to take over in our ambition to get things
There's
done.
A sense in which we're blinded to where the whole narrative is going.
Correct.
And submitting the greater narrative.
Yeah.
While letting the desires that we have fall in conformity with His parameters.
Sure. And His design for what you're to do in this grander narrative. What I'm to do in this grander narrative. But none of it works without learning how to abide, learning how to trust in what the Spirit is moving in us to do. And I think that, going to one of your other words, I think in that is stewardship. Mm-hmm. I think in that is, if we learn that, then becoming stewards of all things that have been given to us becomes a much easier thing to tackle.
So, stewarding our ambition, it's a process. Yeah. The process of patient persistence. Mm-hmm. This is not a unique Eugene Peterson phrase. I think actually Nietzsche is who was credited with saying it, but Peterson had a book titled A Long Obedience in the Same Direction. And I think about that phrase often. Long obedience in the same direction.
Are our lives being led with a long obedience in the same direction? Now, our sinful nature, our selfish desires cause us to weave off that path. But if our views are ones that we are, like you were just saying, in a long pursuit of becoming, almost instead of doing, but becoming.
Yes.
I think if our focus is on becoming, the doing becomes the natural fruit of that.
Without an ambition, you can't steward. In some sense.
Yes, that's true. And God can use that in that becoming process to refine.
So ambition is required in order to steward.
Mm-hmm. I think we're all given ambition in different spades, right?
Man, stewardship then requires a huge amount of submission, because I have to be willing for the waves to change.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Because, look, I think it's fair to say that most of what you're going to deal with this week is going to be related to real estate. Mm-hmm. But what if not?
Yeah.
What if not?
Yeah. What if that's the entry point into whatever God has?
Yeah.
And that's how I view it. I think it's real estate is the entry point into most of the relationships that I'm going to experience this week. But it's not the X to Y, A to B, that whatever comes, whatever God has to unfold this week, I want to be in that.
The willingness that I am for the narrative to go beyond my expectations, different from my expectations, is the boundary of my joy.
Yeah.
Because if the narrative of this week is locked in and must stay fixed to my existing schedule, then when it zigs or zags, I will lose joy.
But I think when you read the Gospels and you see Jesus, you see someone that's very, what our society would term inefficient.
Yeah.
Right? His schedule is inefficient. And that is very counter to what an ambitious, driven person's schedule would look like in our society. It's very efficient. It's very clean. There's not a lot of wasted space and a lot of wasted energy. But that feels counter to what God is asking us to engage in. He's not asking us to engage in inefficiency for inefficiency's sake. I think he's asking us to be open.
Which is a whole different economy.
It's a different economy. It's, one thing that I've felt convicted by probably 5 or 6 years ago was the over efficiency of my calendar.
Yeah.
You and I have scheduled some time to meet. Well, I've got something right behind it.
Right.
If I'm being ultimately efficient.
Right.
But basically, I felt like the Lord was saying, you need to let your calendar breathe a little bit. If you and I are having lunch and we think that it's going to take an hour, you need to plan 2.
Yeah.
Because what I need you to do is I need you to have a spirit that is open for whatever and wherever this conversation may lead. Now, oftentimes, 9 times out of 10, the lunch still ends at an hour.
Yeah.
But the 1 out of the 10 times where it may be somebody that wants to take the conversation in a whole other direction, my heart is at least better prepared for that than me and my own individualistic mindset, blinders on, efficiency, because I want to be ambitious, because I think this is where we've messed up the stewardship word. I think we sometimes say, well, if I am ambitious and I am driven and I go make a lot of money.
Everything's leveraged.
Yeah. I'm leveraging everything because I want to make a lot of money and give a lot of money away.
Sure.
Okay. On its face, that's not a bad concept, but I think it's a very shallow concept for what God is asking for us.
Our culture would rule Jesus as inefficient. And theologically, we know he squandered nothing.
Yes.
So that has to be reconciled. And I don't think that it's a meet in the middle. I have to figure out how to be in a Jesus-like fashion.
Certainly.
With my marriage, with my parenting, with my neighborhood, with my work.
Yeah.
Man, what a good word.
And if we view that as a excuse for doing our job, we've completely messed up the whole idea.
What do you mean if we use that?
If we use this idea that, I can be inefficient, I can just kind of almost be laissez-faire with my work, then we have kind of come all the way back to square one and realized that we are not valuing.
It takes a lot of work to be on the surfboard in the moment.
Yeah,
right? You can't just go limp on the surf because you fall off the surfboard.
It's a great analogy.
So to stay on the surfboard requires diligence. And there's a worship component to this.
Yeah.
Joy, celebration.
Yeah, what are we joyful for? What are we celebratory for? Is it for outcomes or is it for process? And I think my hope in my own life is on a daily basis, I'm becoming more process-oriented than results-oriented. But do you actually believe that the process creates better outcomes? Is that something that you believe in your heart as a believer? as a follower of Jesus, and I would argue, irrespective of religious viewpoints, I think a process that you believe in will ultimately create better results at the end of the day. And I think that's what we're after, then as followers of Jesus, what is it? What is that process? What does it look like? Do we believe that if we go into our week with that very open-eyed mindedness, not only will we have worldly success, I think that's possible, but even if worldly success is not part of it, are we being molded and shaped more into Christ-likeness? And I think that is our ultimate goal, where we find joy, we find contentment, we find true happiness.
Yeah.
And then we start to view the results in a different mindset, as opposed to, did they meet my arbitrary expectations that I placed on them before things got started? Is that the case?
It reframes success.
It reframes it. But I think that's the part that we don't trust that process, and we don't trust that is actually better for our souls, better for who we are. But I think also then puts our results in their proper perspective, when they're better than we expected, or when they're worse than we expected, or when they're right on when we expected.
To prodigal son.
Yeah.
You have the Father. Enjoy that relationship.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and I think that's where we can get tripped up in this ambition side, is when we in our nature want to separate, again, the binary aspect. We want to separate the good from the bad, and we want to be the good ones. And those bad ones over there, they're the ones that need help. When in reality, at the core center, both are in need. And both are in need of that relationship with God, regardless of what they're doing. That feels like that's the jumping off point for the true stewardship, for what we're trying to achieve, is ultimately seated in our relationship with God and our abiding in God. And then there will be natural outflows from that. But oftentimes we are arrogant in our own successes, because we're trying really hard. We get pats on the back. People say bravo, well done,
or shame on you.
Yeah, or shame on you. But we, even in those moments where we're getting the applause, we have forgotten that the primary reason is that our primary goal of our life is to relate to God, be in relationship to God, abide with Him. And then the byproduct of that is our ambition. We have some ambition attached to that. We can't be lazy. But ultimately, it's what God does in the midst of that, because that's where we need to be. Not all of us need to be CEOs of...
Can be.
Yeah.
It should be.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Nothing would get done.
No, nothing would get done. But it's all needed